Hey everyone, as you all know, I am quite the sci-fi, fantasy, geeky, nerdy girl who loves all those things. So I was so excited when I met an up and coming fantasy author. Um, and I got to tell you, I'm really excited about the whole premise of her book, but I'll let her tell you all about that later. What I wanted her for today was so she could talk to you about what it's like to just go after your dream with everything you've got. So for you ladies out there who think that you can't pursue your dream, maybe you've got that book inside you, you've got that podcast inside you, you've got that business inside you, whatever it is, and you think you can't do it. We're here today to tell you that you're wrong and yes, you can. So, welcome to the Rebel Tribe podcast. It's the space for women who refuse to play small, settle for less, or stay in the box society tries to put them in. I'm Melodian Whiteley, your host, your coach, and your biggest cheerleader, and I'm here to give you the real, raw, and unfiltered truth about what it takes to build the life that you want on your terms. This is where mindset meets strategy, confidence meets action, and doubt. We're just going to leave that behind. So, no fluff, no sugarcoating, just real conversations, real growth, and real results. So, if you're ready to shake things up, step into your power, and create a life that's as bold and unstoppable as you are, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Rebel Tribe. Let's do that. Let's do all these things with Faith. So Faith is my author friend, and we'll let her tell you all about her book later. But right now, I want to just introduce herself, and yeah, well, I'll just let her introduce herself first, and then I've got a whole bunch of questions for her.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Faith Lymburner. I'm a 24-year-old graduated from college, working on my path to becoming an author.
Okay, well, before now, what the reason that I really wanted you in here is because you were working a little bit. You actually had a job, like all the rest of us. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, I was working as a community relations specialist for a moving company, and that was a lot of marketing, stuff like that. And they ended up laying me off because of financial reasons. About mid-December of last year. And so that was kind of a fun time, as you can imagine.
All too well, unfortunately. How did you first react when you found out you were being laid off?
Uh, I personally did not see it coming. Now, when I went and talked to my parents afterwards, they saw it coming, but me personally, I didn't. And so I was really surprised and kind of hurt because I felt I had given a lot to the job and I had put a lot of effort forward that was feeling unappreciated. And so, yeah, I was very surprised and hurt that I was let go. But afterwards, thinking about it, uh, ultimately, I think it was a good thing. But at the time, yeah, I was upset.
Well, a lot of people, probably myself included, would have struggled with uncertainty after losing a job, especially like right around the holiday season. But you didn't. What made you decide that, okay, I'm going to write a book?
Well, it's always been on my mind and it's always been my passion. I want to be an author. I want to publish books. And so I've been writing ever since I was a little girl. And so really, when I no longer had that job taking up all of my focus, I could now dedicate that time to working on what I really truly enjoyed and what I wanted to do with my life. And I had this book already in the works, so I could now dedicate my time to taking the next step with that novel.
Now, I know you're working, I'm sure, to keep yourself afloat financially while you finish the book. So, what kinds of things are you doing, and what's it like? How are you balancing working, working enough to keep yourself afloat and still finishing your novel?
So, as of right now, I still don't have a full-time job yet. I'm still looking for one, but it's been more, I saved up money in my bank account. So I had money saved up that could cover me financially for quite a few months. And then I have a couple of side businesses that I have going on that have been able to help me out and keep me afloat there. And then I do a couple of catering jobs on the side. And so just quite a few different areas that I have some income coming in, even if it's not a full-time job or even a part-time job yet, that have helped keep me afloat financially. And I've also just decided not to stress out about it. One of the, I would say, leading signs of stress is financial difficulties, and I've just decided to just kind of let it go and focus on myself as a person and my future and not let it stress me out. And that's kind of helped with doing all that while focusing on my book because I've let it not become, while working, I've let it not become the focus of my life because my passion, I did that with my past job. And I couldn't really focus on my books or writing because I let my job take up all of my time and energy. And that can make you very unhappy in life. And I was very unhappy. And so I've decided while a job is important, and yes, you need money because unfortunately the world runs on money, it doesn't have to be my main focus and it doesn't have to be what drives me in my everyday life. My passions can be that. And so that's kind of how I've started to balance it is using that time that I have free to work on my passions, dedicating a time to it and not letting jobs that can quickly let you go for a multitude of reasons, even if you didn't do anything wrong, be what I revolve my life around.
Looky there, ladies. What did she just say? She has a couple of little businesses that are keeping her afloat. I'm just pointing that out because you all know how I feel about multiple streams of income. And if you don't have them, you need them. And she's a prime
Mhm.
example. She's got money coming in that's keeping her afloat while she finishes her book. Even if she wasn't writing a book, she's got money coming in that's keeping her afloat while she's looking for a job. So thank you for
Mhm.
proving my point.
Yes, yes, definitely. Having multiple streams of income is a very smart idea because jobs, there is a person in charge. And so they can decide what your paycheck is, your hours are, when to let you go, even if you didn't do anything wrong. And so having only that to support you is not enough, especially if they let you go. What are you going to do? And so having multiple streams of income to support yourself in case anything happens with one, you have others where income is coming in. And I would say saving up money just in case anything happens, then you have that money saved up that could support you for a while as well. And so you're kind of set in multiple different ways.
I want to talk about your book because, like I said, I have all the great fantasy science fiction series. I mean, yeah, if you ever saw my house, you're like, where do you keep all these books at? It's
Yeah, yeah.
love me, love my books. Sorry, but so I'm excited because you said this was going to be a series, right? This was like book
Yes,
one
it
of the
is.
series. So yeah, so it's like, oh, I got a brand new series to look forward to. What inspired the story behind your book?
So quite a few different things. So this really it was built on the characters first. So we have Oliver, who's a the equivalent of an FBI agent, and then we have Quincy, who's a master thief. And so the entire story started with just these two characters and then was built on them. And these characters were inspired by, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but the TV show White Collar. And you have an FBI agent in that who becomes the handler to a criminal forger that he caught named Neil Caffrey. And so that show delves into their dynamic. And then I was also inspired by the TV show Lucifer, which has a kind of similar dynamic between a cop and a not so follow the law kind of guy. And so that inspired these two characters of really playing around with that dynamic of this guy that's follow the law, you're a good guy, break the law, you're a bad guy, and really like kind of like straight-laced guy. And then this kind of person that plays fast and loose with the rules. They have fun in life. They're charming, suave, kind of playing around with those dynamics. And that's kind of what inspired and built the book at first. And a fun fact, the, these characters were actually more built on their voices. So I do this thing, and what I would recommend for anyone who wants to write a book. Now, you don't have to do it, but I think it's a really good tip, is hitting record on your phone and acting out like the scene you're wanting to do or something along those lines. One, it helps you find the voices of your characters, which is very important because if you don't have the voice of your character found, it's very difficult for you to actually write the book because you can't write a book in the voice of a character you don't have. And it also helps you get more realistic with the scene. It helps you actually kind of get it all visualized because you acted it out. And that's a tip I found while in college while writing this book. And so these characters were built on the voices that I created for them in acting it out.
Interesting. I've never heard anybody, and I know several authors, and that's an interesting concept. I've never heard of it being done that way. That's actually pretty cool. Okay. That is. I'm not a novelist. I mean, I have written books, but I'm not a novelist, so that's kind of intrigues me. Hmm. I love the premise of the book. Do you want to talk a little bit about the theme of your book? You know, what themes your book explores?
Yeah, so originally, before I realized this was going to be a series, the story was just the first chapter was written in Oliver's point of view. And then when I started rewriting it for the first draft, I wrote it in third person view, following Quincy and Oliver. And the theme kind of formed into looking at the view that no one is just good or bad, everyone is somewhere in between. And then when I started planning the second book, because I've already got the outline for that planned, I started realizing that the story overall is more than just that. And more than that, I started realizing it's not these other character stories, it's Quincy's story and the journey he goes on. And so that changed into it being a theme of kind of identity and how people view others based off preconceived notions or first impressions, or even the choices they think they understand that a person has taken, and how that doesn't necessarily define who that person actually is. And your identity can be built on a lot of different things. People can view you a certain way, but sometimes you have to find yourself and not let other people's views of you define you. And so this book and the series is built on Quincy and these characters' views of him. Each book is in a different character's perspective, following along with a series of events on how they view Quincy and how that changes. And I'm actually doing an interesting thing. I'm writing a second series that will parallel this one, that is solely from Quincy's view of all of these events. And you see in Quincy's eyes how he views himself and how that changes over time. And so that has what ended up being the main theme of this entire series is the perceptions that people have of others and the world and how that can change based off the people you meet or the things you go through and all of that. So it was kind of delved a lot deeper than I originally thought and planned that it would go, but I'm kind of excited to see where it will go.
So it sounds like you've had a little bit of experience with perceptions and how did your personal journey shape these characters of the story?
So that is kind of similarly to Quincy on how a person views you and how you think you're presenting yourself a certain way, um, but also how they view you doesn't define you. I've had multiple friends who they've sought a thought a certain thing about me, even though I've been really good friends to them, have not shown that at all. And they've, you know, thought I wouldn't be a good friend because of maybe what my beliefs were or whatever. They turned their back on me because of the way they thought I was and who they thought I was, even though I wasn't like that at all. And for a while, I let that impact me. I let, what I thought were my failures as a person shape me. And I had to realize, and I'm still realizing, that others' view of me is not who I am. And even the way I view myself may not be who I fully am because depending on where you are in life, you might be at a high or a low point. And if you're at a low point, you don't normally view yourself well. But that doesn't mean that's who you are. And so that has been a hurdle that I've been working on getting over. And that kind of plays into Quincy's character. Now, he's a lot more charming and suave and everything than I am, but it plays into his character on him realizing who he really is and kind of finding peace with himself. And that's something that I'm still working on, finding peace with myself. And so playing that into his character has been an interesting journey.
I remember all too well what writing my first book was like. Um, Lots of challenges. I mean, and even with the second one, I just was complaining today that it's like this was so much. It's actually harder than the first one. Okay, so can and they weren't novels, so I can imagine a novel is even harder. I don't have that kind of imagination. So, were there any unexpected challenges that you came across with writing your first book?
Yeah, I would say so. Originally, so I wrote this book for my thesis in college because I thought that, hey, this is the final thing that'll push me to actually writing a book because I need to do it for a school project. And when I need to do something for school, I apparently get it done. And I'd been wanting to write a book for a while, so I thought this was the final push I needed. Well, I had actually, for the first semester, been working on a different book. And for that one, I don't know, I just didn't like the direction it was going. I didn't like how I was writing it, and I got really, really stuck on it. And writing no longer felt fun. And that's a sign for me that I needed to take a step back and look at something differently. Because if writing no longer feels like a joy, there's something wrong because it is my passion, it is my joy. And so I took a step back, and that's when I found the old first chapter that I wrote for this story. And I was like, oh, I remember this. And I had reignited passion for it. And so during, what was it, Christmas break, I wrote first 6 chapters, I think. And then I made a bunch of maps. I started doing character designs, cover designs, like the whole stuff. And I finally did something that I've never done in my life. And that was actually outline a story. Because I'm one of those people that I write whatever comes to mind and then I somehow put it together. And so I have ending scenes, I have beginning scenes, I have random scenes in the middle, and it's all kind of thrown together. And I kind of have an idea of the story in my head, but it's not actually put together. So I finally made that outline, which helped me a lot because in doing that, I could then shape the story and see where I wanted it to go. And then I started writing it for that second semester. And really, the biggest hurdles to get over in that was one, I got stuck on a couple of chapters, even with the outline. And it wasn't necessarily anything big. It was just I couldn't get myself to write. My brain just wouldn't, we call it writer's block, and you know that, but like it just wouldn't work. And so one of the things I did to get over that was I just went and wrote something else because you should write every day if you want to be an author, even if it's not for the story that you're working on, even if it sucks or you think it's trash afterwards. because one, you keep that muscle working, but two, that can oftentimes help you in the long run when you go back to be able to write your story because it can sometimes reignite the ideas and passions for that story. But as long as you keep writing, it helps. And so that was something I had to do to get over that hurdle. And I was able to then write those chapters. And then the other hurdle was since this was for my thesis, I only had, because I started it in the second semester, 4 months to write 27 chapters. And nearing the end, I realized I wouldn't quite meet that goal. So I had to find ways that I could still present this as a thesis and kind of cohesively finish it, but not have it be fully finished. And so that was another hurdle I had to get over because I'm a perfectionist. So I want something to be done and complete if I submit it. And that was something mentally I had to be like, oh, it's not going to be there. I'll work on it after I submit it for my thesis. But sometimes you just have to stop at a point and live with that point and then continue on afterwards. And so those were kind of the biggest hurdles at the time of first writing the first draft. And then as I'm getting into the second draft, the bigger hurdles are keeping it. Oh, you kind of froze. Okay, we're good. Was keeping it cohesive in a story and really delving more into that theme that I started creating in the second book and thus the series because I didn't have the second book planned when I wrote the first draft. And so it's a very different theme fully for the full series that I want to touch on in the first draft that wasn't originally planned. And also, I wrote it in third person, as I said, falling Oliver and Quincy. And now the second draft is just first person falling Oliver. So now I have to fix that. And then I would think the final hurdle is I'm writing both Oliver's viewpoint and Quincy's viewpoint, so the two parallel books at the same time. Now, some people might say, oh, you shouldn't do that. You should write just one at a one and then write the second one. But because there's multiple scenes where they're super emotional or something big happens from one viewpoint, I feel I have to write them at the same time because then I touch on the emotions from that person's viewpoint, and then I can write from the other person's perspective how they would kind of view what that person's going through. And so that's an interesting way to play with it. And it's my biggest hurdle right now while writing it because I have to write it in two different distinct voices at the same time. And so that is a bit of a challenge, but I'm having fun with it.
Interesting concept. I've never tried writing two books at once either. My goodness. Okay. Ah, all right. I don't want you to give anything away. And I'm not laughing at you. I'm just because I have a friend who's an author and well, I'm actually posting her episode today. And if you listen to her, she has some very unique ways also of finding her books. And it just amazes me how everybody thinks that authors just sit down and all this stuff just kind of comes out of them or something. And it's not that way at all. There's so many different ways where we find our voice, our characters, our inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
It just amazes me. I've talked to several authors and everyone has a different process that they go through and some of them are actually quite unique. It's very cool. I don't want you to give anything away, okay? Because I'm looking forward to reading the book myself. But could you tell us about like a favorite scene that you've written already or something in the book that means a lot to you?
Yes, yes. So I'll be super careful not to spoil anything. But there is this scene near the end of the book, and I promise it won't spoil anything. But between Oliver and this other character named Kaido, who's kind of a mentor slash person they look up to. He's guided Quincy throughout his life and kind of has been there for Oliver a little bit throughout the book as well. And there's this scene between them that they have sort of a philosophical discussion, and they're kind of figuring out what their next steps are. And to me, the way I wrote that scene, I am so proud of that scene. Like, I don't even know if I'll change it at all in the second draft. I might just copy and paste it because I'm so proud of that scene. But just kind of there's a lyricism and a beauty in the way I wrote the words. And so that is probably one of my proudest scenes. But it also is kind of the culmination of the theme of that are we good? Like, is the person just good? Or are they just bad? Or everyone somewhere in between? And it's kind of that culmination, final understanding of what that means in that scene. And it's an interesting scene because you only have Oliver and Kaido. Quincy's not there for this scene. The person who presented that first idea that no one's just good or bad, everyone's in between. So you get this perspective, then, this idea of the world from other people and how they are kind of starting to understand this viewpoint. And so, yeah, it's probably one of my favorite scenes because of that, that it's that culmination, but also because of the way I wrote it.
You said in the beginning that you were kind of blindsided and hurt and disappointed by the layoff, but then you thought maybe it was all for the best. Do you think losing your job was maybe a blessing in disguise?
Yes, I do. And people may call me crazy for that, but ultimately, I don't think it was the best environment for me to be in. I think it was a good thing for the time, and it was something I needed to do to learn the things I did, to make the connections that I did, because I met you through that job. But I wasn't meant to stay there. And this is from my personal belief that I think it was God's sign that I needed to leave. I think he had been giving me a lot of signs and I had been ignoring them. There were multiple things that had happened that I had thought about walking away and putting in my letter of resignation, even if I didn't have a job to go to, which I ultimately decided not to do. I was just like, okay, I guess in my brain I decided I'll give them another chance. Where it was just really a small thing. I'm making a big deal out of nothing. I don't want to leave when I don't have another job to back me up. And so I think this needed to happen. I needed to leave because it wasn't the best environment for me. And while I learned what I needed to, it's time to, move on with my life and focus on other things in life. And that also job also showed me that, you know, I can't let a job be the driving factor in my life because people can let you go for no reason or what seems like not a lot of reasons, even if you put your best foot forward and your best effort forward. And if I let that be the thing that shapes me in life, the driving focus of my life, I'm just going to end up being disappointed. And it's better to follow my passions, follow my dreams, and at the end of the day, it's just a job. It's just a job, and it's just a way to make money, and that's all it really was. And so, yeah, I think it was ultimately for the best. I kind of needed to leave, and I needed to center myself and figure out what I really wanted to do with my life. So,
I know there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of women out there right now that are saying she's just crazy. Okay. How can you just like lose your job and think that's a good thing? What advice would you give to someone that's maybe facing a similar situation, whether it's a layoff or a downsizing or any kind of big life change?
so, really, things may be nerve-wracking and you might be a little afraid of what's going to happen for you for your next steps in life, but you can't let yourself be stuck in that fear. Because if you stay stuck in that fear, your situation will never change and you will never succeed or go towards the goals and things that you want to do in life if you let that fear rule you. And instead, you have to, one, even if the situation is bad, keep a positive attitude. And that's what's helped me a lot is keeping that positive attitude and look towards the bright sides. Yes, the situation sucks. Yes, it's not great. Yes, you don't know necessarily what your next steps for the future are, what you're going to do. But if that's all you think about, you're you're not going to you're not going to find that job you want to find. You're not going to get out of the situation you're in because you're focusing on the situation you're in. And so if you can change your mindset and focus on the next steps to get yourself out of the situation you're in, focus on the next steps towards your goals, your future, your success, action overcomes fear. And so you are more likely to then succeed and get yourself out of that situation because you didn't let your fear control you. And so if anyone is going through a big change, it's gonna be nerve-wracking. It's gonna probably make you afraid. But if you don't let that fear rule you and you look towards the next steps in life and try to keep that positive attitude, look towards the positives and not let the negatives rule you, one, you'll be happier, but two, you are more likely to succeed in life.
Good advice. So you've got a series, because when I talked to you, I don't remember if you said there was a series. I know had one book. I don't remember if you told
Yes.
me it was going to be a series. And now it sounds like you've got another series coming after this series. Are you going to be a full-time author?
Yes. That is my goal. That's what I want to do with my life. I have a document with I have multiple books that are technically in the works that I've written parts for, or multiple series that I've written ideas slash parts for. This is just the one I'm focusing on because if I don't focus on one, I'll just have multiple pieces that never amount to anything. So, yeah, right now my goal is to work on that first series in Quincy's parallel, and I'll release them in kind of staggering order. So it'll be this first book with Oliver's perspective, and then I'll release Quincy's version of events afterwards, and then it'll be the second book from the one person's perspective, and then Quincy's version, because Quincy's version would kind of spoil things. And so you kind of need to see it from this other perspective because that's the one you'll go back and read afterwards after reading Quincy's version because you're like, oh, I missed so many things. So that's kind of, I'm working on those two series right now, and it's not as, it's difficult writing it at the same time, but it's not as difficult because I'm writing similar events. This style of writing is supposed to parallel each other. And so it's a little bit easier in that way. And so I think it'll be easier to get the two series done on time or together. And then from that, I already know what series I want to work on afterwards. And that one I'm having a lot of fun with. It's another fantasy series that delves a lot more into a lot more kind of the mind games, a lot more of the power plays, but it also delves into love and relationships and stuff like that. And so that is another series, but I do have a bunch of other series ideas and book ideas and first chapters written and all of that. So that is my goal, kind of towards the future is to become a best-selling author and have that be my ultimate passion and thing I do.
Cool. Why not? Why not? Okay, so for those of us
Yeah,
who
why
are
not?
eagerly waiting for the first book, or those that have just heard about this and now are like, okay, I want to hear about the first book. Where can we find you? And then also, where can we find links to? You said you had a couple businesses, so how can we find all of these so that we can, number one, wait for your book to come out and keep up with where you are in that process, and also maybe support your businesses so we can kind of support you on your journey to being an author.
Yeah, so I have so I'm making an Instagram for my writing. Instagram is being difficult right now and not letting me make one, so it's not currently made yet. But when I do make it, It'll be under a name similar to Eliza, spelled Eliza, Faye, spelled Faye, Anthologies. It'll be under that. Eliza Faye is kind of a pseudonym, but it's based off my actual name. And it'll be under that for any social media that I do. But if someone wants to go read the first half of the first draft, so it's unedited, a lot is changing, might not be the greatest, but if someone wants to go read it, it is published on my college's Scholarly Commons. So if you look up honors thesis OBU and go to 2023, it's going to be under Are We Good or Bad or somewhere in between an original novel by Faith Lymburner. And it'll be under there if someone wants to go read that. Now, as I said, it's not edited and it's a first draft, so it's gonna be very, very, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Unclean, I guess. But if someone's interested, they can go and read that. And then for business, I have a Instagram for my wood burning business. That is Faith E Creations. And so someone can go there and kind of see what I've done, and they can also DM me if they want me to do a commission piece for them. But yeah, that's kind of where people can find me. And then I also have a personal Instagram as well, if they want to check that out for whatever reason. It's not really connected to that other stuff, but I might post on that when I make the writing Instagram and stuff like that. And it's little_limeburn13. So there are a few different ways you can go and check me out. And I'll probably post when I do create that writing, Instagram and social media and so on.
And I will post all of these in program notes and descriptions and everywhere so everyone can find them. This has been very fun. I loved listening to how you
Yeah.
actually come up with ideas for scenes and characters and everything. Like I said, everybody that I've talked to has a different process, and yours is as unique as all of theirs, and it just intrigues me. I don't know. I always have ideas rattling around in my head, so maybe one day I'll actually put all of your ideas together, that those processes that you use, and sit down and write my own novel. Probably not. I'm more of a nonfiction kind of gal, but you never know, because listening to all of you and kind of inspires me.
Sometimes you just, why
Okay.
not? Sometimes it's a why not?
Why not? You never
Yeah.
know. Why not?
Yeah.
So this has been fun. I love it. I'm patiently waiting for the book. It's going to be good. I can't wait. Like I said, I'm a huge, huge fantasy sci-fi nerd, so I'm excited about it. That was one other question I wanted to ask you. So you talked about being a full-time author. I know there are people out there that have thought about this. I mean, you see all these authors that make really good money as authors, and I'm thinking of a couple of well-known fantasy writers myself and sci-fi novelists who, everybody knows their name, but
Mm-hmm.
it takes a little bit of work to get there. I mean, most authors, I've had my publisher tell me this, right? He's like, you're not going to get rich. Most of us are not going to get rich with our books. That's not why we write them. We write them because we have this thing inside us that has to come out, and we hope we make
Yep.
some money with them, but we're probably not going to get rich with them. So
Mm-hmm.
what drives what drives these people? What drives you? What drives people to be full-time authors?
So yeah, kind of as you said, we have this thing inside us that we want to get on paper and share. For me, I have a multitude. That's just kind of the way my imagination works. So I have a lot of different ideas. And for me, it's not about the money that I'll make. Or for me, what I want to accomplish is impacting people positively through my books. Whether that's just because they read a book they enjoyed or because they connected to the characters and their stories and it helped them. because you can see that a lot, even with fantasy, especially with fantasy books, or fiction books. And even if I impact just one person positively, even if my books never hit it off, um, I've accomplished my goal and my reason for writing. And I also write because I enjoy it. It doesn't really matter to me if other people do, but I enjoy what I do and I enjoy creating these worlds. And if I make money off of it, great. If I don't, it's whatever. And if that's what you want to do, you do have to plan for it and prepare for it because, as you said, it can be very difficult to make money off of it and so on. And so that's just being prepared for that and planning for that, which is why I'm working and getting jobs and so on. So I do have money, but I can do this passion. And yes, I'm going to hope and I believe that these stories will get somewhere and that'll sustain me. But you never know with the way people what they like and what they read. But we have social media and technology nowadays. And that helps a lot with getting traction for what you're writing and getting traction for your books. We've seen it a lot with people posting on TikTok or whatever about their story or in their books, and it gets a lot of traction that way because people hear about it more and a lot easier. And you can do fun little things to get people interested, like skits or talking about how you're building the world or whatever, things like that. And because we have that, I think nowadays it allows authors of today to be able to get the word out better and you're more likely to succeed that way. Um, and also just for me, I'm going to have multiple people read my books before I publish it and going through multiple drafts and all of that. So by the time I publish it, one, I would have gotten the word out because I have social media and I would have gone that way. But also I know people are going to enjoy it because I've had multiple people read it and tell me they enjoy it. Um, so I think if you take those kinds of steps, you're more likely to succeed at that goal because you're doing the things that will get the traction for it and will get people wanting to read it and talk about it. And if you write a good book and you have people read it, they're more likely to share it with their friends because they enjoyed it. And so that's kind of on that. But yeah, I'm okay if it doesn't go that route. I'll just enjoy it anyway because I like writing and I like creating these worlds. So
Pick me to read your book. No, I'll buy it anyway, but if you need somebody to read it for you, I'll be happy to do that. But,
definitely keeping that in mind. The more people I can get to beta read it, I think the better and more polished it'll be.
and you just gave me a great idea because I'm thinking I need to put together like a summit or a panel or something about and get all of you fantasy novelist types together and have you share how you go through this whole creative process because I'm sure there are others out there like me that have all these ideas rattling around in their head and think, you know, I should write that someday and don't even know how to get started. It's a big difference between I think I may be wrong, but I think there's a huge difference between writing fiction and nonfiction. I could be
Yes,
wrong.
there
And
is.
authors out there,
I've
if I'm
written,
wrong, please correct me. But
no, I've written both. Um, I'm one of those people that's written a lot of different types of styles and genres. So I've written nonfiction and fiction. And I do think it's very different because with fiction, you are creating a world and you're creating characters. So you're creating a story. And sometimes that's from basically scratch. And whereas nonfiction, that's something either you've experienced yourself, so you have that story already created, you just have to put it on paper, or it's something someone else you know has experienced. And so those characters are kind of already created. That story is kind of already created. And you just have to find a way to then formulate it on paper. So I think in the direction you go with those, it can be very different because of that.
cool. Now I'm more convinced than ever that I need to do that. I might reach out to you here in a little while and ask if you want to be part of a summit or something.
Yeah, that might be fun.
But thank you so much for getting on here and sharing this with us. I know there's
Yeah, no
I
problem.
know there's a lot of people out there that are number one in they're just so inspired by the fact that you took what would have been nerve-wracking for many of us and turned it into a positive thing. And then there's the fantasy little people like me that are sitting here going, go finish the book.
I'm
So
working on it, I promise.
so I thank you for that. And you all know the drill. You all know what I ask at the end of every episode. Do the thing, do the like, the comment, the share, the whatever. I'm so non-techie that I don't even know what to ask you to do, but I do need to know to ask you to like, comment, share, and do all those other things. So do that stuff. Okay. And we will see you on the next episode. And stay tuned because I may be announcing a panel or a summit with a bunch of, and pretty much you're all fantasy authors too. I just realized that most of you that I've talked to are fantasy authors. So you can tell who I hang out with. Thank you so much, Faith. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.